We're waiting for now. All right. Well, all right, awesome.
Feel free to lecture.
I think, okay, I think we're ready to start our Halo setup meeting, so.
Yep. Thanks, man.
Right away. Here,
Okay, awesome. We'll start with some announcements. So, okay, so fall CTF registration is open. You can go to sigpwny.com/register24. Feel free to fill that out. That's for us to get a head count for how many people are coming, so we can give you t-shirts and badges. So make sure to sign up as soon as you can, because it's going to be like first come, first serve. And also this past weekend, we finished 4th place in CTF qualifications. And so we will be sending a team to New York finals on November 6th and 8th.
Mini spoilers of Purdue.
Okay, so we mentioned this at our first meeting, but again, don't get arrested. Make sure you're only attacking computers that you have permission to access. And if you don't have permission to attack a tech system, you can face anywhere between a fine and 20 years in jail. So if you don't have permission to do it, don't do it. That's pretty much it. Okay, so for our example challenges that we go over in these meetings, we do it on our Pwny CTF site. So create an account right now. Go to ctf.sigpwny.com. We put challenges on there for you to build experience. So yeah, if you want to participate with the content that we're teaching, make sure to go on there and solve the challenges on site. And obviously feel free to work with your neighbors in order to solve something that you're having trouble with. So if you go on the ctf.sigpwny.com right now, you can enter this flag for our meeting. And we do a lot of XKCD for these meetings. So here's one. With that.
By the way, if you want, you can also check out the slides on our website. If you go to sigpwny.com/meetings, and we have a PDF of the slides and all the setup instructions that we're going to go through today. So we're going to be moving through these pretty quickly because there's a lot of stuff to cover for setup. But if you need to go back and reference slides, they're on our website.
All right. So you know just what we're going to be going over today. We're going to talk about what is a shell. I have to for a while, users know. Using the shell, getting familiar with the Unix fundamentals, and getting your environment set up for doing code, which is binary exploitation, programming, directional stuff, reverse engineering, doing crafting, DRM, but it's kind of the same idea. And making sure you have all these tools, environment set up, so you're good to go for CTFs, both Pwny CTF, which you haven't already, definitely make an account. You can follow along with challenges here. And also the for debugging programs dynamically. So if you have a question at any point during the meeting, raise your hand. We do have a lot of slides to cover, but one of our helpers can come help you out during the meeting. So
can we have helpers please stand up just so everyone knows where we are? So we'll be, as we do set up, these guys will be walking around helping you guys just to help you get things going.
So that's where things happen. This is true. Don't take it from me, take it from our microarchitecture expert, Liz Login, who's along. On the slide. Perfect. Thank you. Right. So what is a terminal? So terminal is not actually this it's a little box we had back in the day, in the old Unix systems where servers inside groups. Nowadays it's like a window on your computer. That's your terminal anyway. And technically, your shell, terminal, sometimes used interchangeably. Your shell is just a program to use typing commands to your computer. It doesn't really sound that interesting per se, but as you'll see in a few slides, it's actually very, very powerful. And pretty fundamental requirement for doing all of the public with SIGPwny. And if you're doing any sort of data science, information science, whatever, in college, pretty useful skill to have. So if you are on Linux, good for you. You're all ready to go, pretty much. You'll notice that Mac and Windows not on the slide. That's on this slide. So if you're on Windows, we're going to recommend using something called Windows Linux. And I'm going to go over how to go in just a few minutes. And from Mac OS, you're like, on one hand, Mac OS is Unix-like. It's based off of this operating system called GSP. But on the other hand, technical design is not going to make things super easy. So there is a little bit of platform-specific setup. But you're not. All right, so yeah, if you're on Windows, you're thinking, okay, well, it's my Windows, that GSP? Well, I'm not really. So you have PowerShell, Command Shell, it's the basic thing, this is a shell, right? You have people who know Command Shell, Command Prompt and PowerShell. These are wizards, like running in this arcane magic, which is completely unknown to men like me. But these are not quite the same shells we want to be using for content SIGPwny. And generally speaking, I'm definitely familiar with those is great. But generally, when we talk about the shell, you're talking about like a Unix shell, like Bash or Z shell, or something like that. All right, so WSL. Basically, we just ironed out most of the kinks. So this should be as simple as if you open this command prompt or PowerShell in Windows, it's like a type of Windows team, type of PowerShell on this administrator, you should be able to type in this string in green, WSL space -- install, and then that's it. And you should hit it, and hopefully that works. And if it doesn't, you have your more size, so if you're not. So if you're on Windows and you're following along, and you don't already have WSL installed, please type this command. WSL is not eligible. You do. It was a nice. WSL install. You can also you can pass in -d to choose your distro. The default is Ubuntu, which is a pretty good starting point, but if you want to use Debian, for example, you can do that as well. Yeah, again, I'm assuming anyone on Windows trying to use WSL, kind of following along. Again, if you have questions, please raise your hand. Helpers sort of facing this way. If you guys want to confirm your shares, sort of like see the crowd. And also point out anyone who has hand raised. But please, we are here to help you. This is about the point of the setup meeting. So please raise your hand if you know. Alternatively, the WSL -install does not look like you. You might be able to try going to the Microsoft Store and searching for Ubuntu. I think there's two versions. One of them is the LTS version, and this is all the one that says Ubuntu. I think the WSL -install is the preferred method, but you may need to
Helpers, stand up. Just like disperse through the room.
And yeah, definitely talk about themselves. Ideally, try to know a little bit. She makes looking like longer slides. So if you're on a really old Windows installation or a very weird manufacturer or something of this nature, you need to do these following steps. Occasionally enable this Hyper-V in Windows. That's on a very old Windows system, so ideally the first 2 slides work for you, but as you go, you might do these things. Our helpers will know how to do these steps, so don't worry about it too much. Yeah, and again, all these slides are available on our website, SIGPwny.com. So if you need help, we can go back to slide. All the other videos. Anyone else need help with WSL? Type WSL on your terminal and it doesn't work for our team. You don't have a terminal. You don't have Windows. That's okay. All right. Give people a minute, and then I definitely set it up Windows. I'm going to start transitioning to Mac OS. We have a question in the back. All right. So, I will be moving along just because there's a lot of material to get through.
Yes.
Yeah, when you do get to the virtual shell, and you start your computer, which should be input to app or Excel app. It's gonna ask you to set a username and a password. You type in the password, it apparently comes yeah. I would recommend using Windows terminal if you're, it's a terminal, it's a default terminal emulator. Allows you to combine multiple shells. You can have, you can have your WSL, Debian shell, the Organic shell, PowerShell, all in one application. You can save out between them, multiplexing features. Yeah, this is optional. You're not going to need this. You can get this from the Windows Store.
Okay. Just to reiterate, you only need to install WSL if you're on Windows. If you're on Linux or Mac, it's still for now. Right now we're just sitting in the yes. And can I get a raise of hands if you're on Windows? If you still need help setting up things out, or you're not completely done yet, please raise your hand. Just so we know, all kinds of stuff. Okay, I see two people back here, can I get numbers?
I need to show of hands. Who here is on Mac OS? Yeah, there we go. Let's hand it over here. Okay, Mac OS. All right. Okay. Show of hands. How many people here are on Linux? Linux? I'll give you hands there. And how many people are on Windows? Okay, all right. I can't see every hand. So again, just to reiterate, we're going over the installation instructions now. You know, these will be available later as well. I highly recommend following along. So you have people here to help you. So we have all these issues before. We know every curriculum. Yeah, so again, if you are on Windows and you do not have WSL set up, by WSL set up, I mean you can't do Unity-A in Ubuntu. Please raise your hand and help her help you. Yeah, we have candidates over there, and we start here, Muslim, Richard. So, we know here. Great. Okay, so again, just to clarify, we have more setup instructions for everyone that require this as a fundamental case. So please make sure you got this stuff. If you're on okay. Anyone need more time for the anybody's over there? All right. Now for the Mac and talk about, I'm going to move on to some other installations. If you're on Mac OS, good news. You have a terminal built in to Mac OS. You can just do solid search, command space, terminal, enter, and you have to apply. However, there are some other optional things you may want to install to make your life easier. So Homebrew is going to be uncontrolled package manager for Mac OS. Or package manager, it manages your packages. You want to install Python or people want to install Perl, so you get any utility. Instead of design it from GitHub, you download a firewall or something like that. Typically, to use Homebrew, you type brew install your package and run the releases, and then you can do brew uninstall package. It's all pretty straightforward. It works. So Mac OS users Any questions regarding any installation over? You do not have to install terminal app. Already on your computer. Question over there. Anyone have any ratings? All right. All macro students are on terminal app. Great. In addition to terminal app, you may be interested in FA2024, which is a different terminal anything. So it's not the shell, it's not the programs per se, you are taking your commands into, you're still using detail, I think it's all macro or benefit in the past. But it has a few more features, round edges, you like licensing stuff, you may not use that. But also, kind of other terminal emulator objects, I thought I was mentioning, they're not important, they're optional, do it on your own time. Okay. I'm gonna pause here. The browsers are
We drag this before the installation instructions. Drag that all the way before every single one. Yeah, before that one. Because there's actually a pretty critical thing.
Another in the front here is on it. Yeah.
No, the issue is Windows Docker will on that.
You can not have to restart it, you can install that's a very good question. So for those of you not know that, if you're on Mac OS and you install or install you do not have to restart your computer, but if you install that in your terminal, you may have to source early or stack or receive or open new stuff. Because the changes may not encourage shells to be. You cannot just and over there. I see a room full of Unix hackers. Everyone's on Unix stuff. Great.
Wait. All right. We're going to take a beat here. Okay. Take a beat. And make sure that everyone is turned on. Okay. You already have.
Oh.
However,
Wait, why are we doing Dr.
no, because people, if you install Docker Phones first before WSL, it's not to solve it by default. It's going when you open when you start WSL by default, you're going to start the Docker version of WSL. There's like a Docker distribution for WSL. This Docker uses WSL.
If you have Docker.
So if you have Docker installed already, yeah, it just keeps it on. Like it doesn't change the default distro. So you have to run a command to change it. So if you do WSL, right, by default, it'll be set as Docker desktop data or Docker. You need to do
Make an announcement.
yes, there's all that you said.
Can I make an announcement about the right now?
Yes. Hold on, wait. Run.
I say we'll have helpers run this command, or you want me to put that up on the?
So Linux distros.
So guys, if you're on Mac installing Homebrew, it's gonna ask you for your password, and after you give your password, you're gonna hit enter again to confirm to install Homebrew. So just hit enter when it prompts you. It appears, you will update lines. It appears you have Docker desktop installed on Windows and you run wsl-f install. This will not put your distribution to Linux. It'll stay on the Docker desktop. So if you have any trouble, please ask for help. All right. Yeah. So, another question, thank you for, I actually have this one, I think it's a very tough thing, but this is good. So, if you're installing Homebrew on macOS, you might get this little thing, it's okay, in order to use Homebrew, you run these commands, well, what are these commands doing? It's going to add the paths from Homebrew, so Homebrew will install these programs. We're gonna go over this, everything, admin setup, I'm gonna install these first, that's usually the hard part. And once your shell needs to be able to look up programs that Homebrew is installing. So this is just asking you to essentially make your path, your shell, aware of these programs. That's what that is doing. And so now command is just to be able to restart your shell environment. Exactly. You can just copy and paste that line, type it in. It's not malware, I think. That was a joke.
Okay, to reiterate,
There you go.
so, George is reconnecting this audience that we're sending out. Can you read the CS128? Okay, so there's a few of you. We're going to have Docker for Windows installed. There's going to be an extra setup instruction because by default, when you run WSL, there is a default Linux distribution that starts. Docker runs on WSL. So it will have this sort of minimal version of Linux that installs, and that doesn't have the like it won't have the step for setting up your root username or password. So if you don't see this root username or password, right? If you did not start root username, or if you see that version of colored terminal in your WSL shell, that means you need to do this step. So you should list the distributions that you have installed, and then set it to the default root suite, which you should install with Microsoft. Does anyone need help with this, or is
Yeah, well, actually, you know, it's.
okay? So
Hey, man. Can I send you some?
All right. Hopefully, I didn't use the revenue. All right. One last thing before we move on. Really quick, I need a little bit, I need to tone down the room a little bit. It's a pop quiz. Sorry, I'm sorry to screw this on, but it's okay. There's a way you can get the answer, and the answer is in the terminal or the shell you install. I want you to type in, I don't know if it's on the files. I'll lay it up on the board. You name dash with a hyphen A. Everyone see that? Anyone in the back not be able to see that? You name dash A. I want you to run that command in the terminal setup you just installed. And yeah. Can I repeat what I just said? Yeah. So on the board, can anyone not see that or I want you to run this command. Uname space dash A. That's it. And I want maybe get some answers from the field on what the result is. Yeah. Great. There you go. Anyone else? Any more answers? The answers are not unique, or they could be unique. They're not all the same. Any more answers? You need that name, George? Anyone? Yeah. Great. Anyone else? Yeah. Awesome. I haven't heard the Darwin or macOS people. You need that right there? Okay, good. You got Darwin. That's the kernel, basically. Your Darwin or something like that for macOS. Good. Any more uname-a? Is anyone not able to run uname-a? You run uname-a and then nothing happens. Uname-a. Only like a few answers. Anyone else? Uname-a, George? I'm going to assume all of you heard those answers to uname-a. You're like, yeah, I got basically the same answer. Okay. If not, please raise your hands. Yeah, let's over here. All right. I'm now going to hand it over to Adarsh to help you install George. This is a cool, I'm not going to spoil it, I'm not our folks. But I just want to make sure everyone's on the same page. Is it okay or not? You can send it over to you, but we're going to do George now. Okay, awesome. Off to it.
So now we're moving on from the terminal and we're going to start with like Rev setup. So as George mentioned, our first program that we want to install is Vico. And so it's a decompiler. So basically it's a reverse engineering toolkit developed by the NSA and it's made open source. And it allows you to disassemble executable files and essentially turns into like an unreadable application into readable code. So when you see like a .exe file, for example, you won't usually be able to see the code behind it, but Geekdrill lets you basically see it in like a C++ code or C code. Yeah. So Geekdrill is Java based. So first you want to install Java, and first you want to check if you have Java by running java-version. Are we all good for Java?
Geekdrill does not automatically install Java. You need to install Java. You do this first.
This is a sign.
Yeah, this setup is running on Windows. So yeah, if you're on Windows.
Just quick thing, someone raised a very, very good point. If you are on Windows, even though we just won't be the setup of yourself, it means Geekdrill specifically is a GUI application. You're going to want to install Java on Windows, not on WSL. You might be able to do this work, but we don't recommend it. We can really help you with that. So again, if you're installing the JDK from Oracle's website, install it for Windows. If you're on Windows. From software Windows in comment or Linux. Okay.
That one thanks. Make sure you have and you're making
About JDK on Windows? Windows? I think OpenJDK may have something. I can answer this question if you don't know. There's different JDK vendors. Sudo might have it. I'll answer this.
That's like that. Look at all standing.
A good point someone brought up, if you are on Windows and you are on the super energy efficient lightweight ARM processor, there's not going to be an ARM installer on the Oracle website for their Java developer kit. But you're not. All of there are many different vendors who have their own copies of Java, and it all basically got the same money for our intents and purposes. So if you are on Windows, it may say ARch64 or ARM or something like that, but not AMD or x86 or x86-64. You can get a copy of the JDK, OpenJDK, from Microsoft. You can just Google JDK, Windows, ARM, or ARch64, or something like that. You can put a link in Discord as well. I don't know if there's much to do that. But that should work just fine. I promise you're not saying, Mom, can we have OpenJDK? We have OpenJDK home. That's JDK home. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm assuming Java now runs on 8 billion devices, plus everyone in this room. Oh, yeah, the pain in the back, maybe mine or oh, somebody computer on great.
Calling Java is pretty easy. It runs these two commands. So sudo apt update and then sudo apt install OpenJDK. Set things up. Yeah, so I think everyone have a solid, only $20. So now we're gonna install our ego, existing organized office. So you want to go to this, by the, you want to download the highlighted map for religious beliefs.
Now, I feel like people are, I don't know how they, let me just ask a question. All right, how many of you are up to this point? Like you reached this step and you're ready to go on. How many of you are not at this point? Raise your hand. Okay. How many of you are still stuck on setting up terminal from earlier? Like if you're on WSL, if you're on Windows, are you still trying to set up WSL? Please raise your hand, just so that we know who we can help. So I have 2 hands here, hand here. Okay. Okay. And who of you is stuck on installing Homebrew from Matt? Please raise your hand. Like don't be shy. Please raise your hand so that we know where you guys are and we can help you because we're here for a reason. We have these slides up, right? We put them up in advance so we can like you can do it on your own, but this session is good we can help you solve that. Henry. Bye. Yeah. Yeah, go on.
Okay, so now, if you have Hydra installed, you can now like Hydra. And so on Windows, it's pretty easy. You just need to double click the Hydra run on that, and it'll run for you. If you're on Mac or Linux, you're gonna have to navigate to your download folder, unzip the Hydra archive that you installed, and go to the unzip Hydra folder. And you want to give people access to Hydra run by doing page on plus hash Hydra run and one dot slash Hydra run. And I'll run
Actually, I think we should skip this. Oh, let's just skip. You want? We'll skip this as well. It's only 5 times. We'll do this at we won't see this.
Yeah, it's
Should I just like sign? Should I just like sign?
Do you have the slide? The slides?
Yeah.
Yeah, you just mention we're skipping past lots of things.
So we're just gonna have a lot of now. Just so you guys can see your normal But for now, we're gonna talk about how to navigate like okay. So now we're gonna talk about like navigating files through Unity. So here we have this diagram in file system. So you can see we have a root directory, and then that leads into directory A, and then in directory A it has another directory C. So and each of these directories have file. So if you do cd/, it'll navigate to the root directory. So one thing with the root directory, if you use cd/, you'll navigate to the directory. And so now that makes your working directory go to directory. So now, since you're in directory A, you can now use directory C. Now we can use directory C and put your working directory in directory C. So now since your working directory is directory C, if you run cd directory B, it's not going to work because it can't see any directory B in directory C. So if you want to navigate to directory B, we start with the root directory and do cd/directory B. I'll bring it to directory B. So before we start from directory C, we want to navigate backwards to the root directory and then navigate to directory B. So this dot means that you're moving into the directory that's immediately above. So both of these dots move you back out of directory C into the root directory. So / directory B moves you back into directory B. So you're down, right? So
Like quick show of hands.
okay. Quick show of hands. How many people are sticking with this so far?
First, right. Ask if anyone wants to tell you how to get to the.
Basically, they just want to like when you're typing something, something your password and find out the return. So what they're gonna do is you're gonna hit the password.
Sorry, I don't like.
So that if like you're.
But can anyone tell me how you can get to near A from our current directory near B? What command would you run? Yeah, so you run cd /near A. So cd starts here, and there's two ways you can do this, right? Because we presented two ways. One is using the absolute path. So if you use the /, we'll start at the root and then you go to near A. But you can also do it relatively by doing the // it'll go at one directory and you go to near A.
Yeah, so as Vin just mentioned, there's two types of paths. The absolute path, which will start with the root directory. So here on the left side, we have an example of like absolute paths. So you have / directory A / file1.txt. And so that's going from the root directory and navigating to specific file directory. And the relative path is a partial path that's relative to your working directory. So if you're in directory A, to navigate to file1, it's going to do file1.txt. Yeah, so if you want to if you want to navigate directory C, you can do cd directory C as the relative path, or cd / directory C as
Suppose
yeah.
You guys will send a message.
Yeah, so some of this is just like notation. So like / directory C is going to be equal to directory C, which is also equal to directory C. And all these are also equivalent to each other.
What we're doing right now. So we're short. Let him finish checking if that unless you have this down. I think he made this.
There's an issue where he's version.
Explaining like wild cards.
Explaining,
Like the wild cards and like simple usage.
we're in what kind of,
Just like using Unix commands.
okay, so Gita install is done now, okay, has GDB install started?
Yes.
Skip a lot of the back.
Hi, I just wanted to bring out bringing several questions. If you have Keyboard open and you see that on screen, you're good. That's all you have work. You don't need to use the computer today. As long as it's been open, you're good.
Yeah, so, the GDB install is not started.
We haven't done any rest setup as that.
So what do they need to do after they install Gita?
That's it. We were gonna do more rest setup, but it was like interesting.
Okay.
Okay. We see a lot of people getting eager setups. All right, and then you can set up a Deidra, we put it install it and run it, I guess. So if you do that, is this uses a called usage of the shell. This slide, don't worry about it. I'm stuck. Looking at it here.
Give it directly to this.
We told you how to break stuff, it's not being Google Docs.
Still in focus bag? There we go. All right.
Okay, so At this point, it's okay if you're not all up to date with Libra, because you do not need Libra to do the next step. But it's good to get it set up now for our future web meetings. But the next few slides are going to be various shell commands. We're going to go over how to use the shell. It's what you got to install it. You don't really know what it is, right? It's Morbius, not Morbius, it's a Neo in the matrix. And Morbius teaches them how to be a matrix master program. Okay, so these commands are for everybody. This is not a Windows, Mac OS, Linux thing. These are for everybody, as long as you're in a Unix-like environment, like WSL, which we should have installed. These are commands for navigating the file system. So you may have seen earlier when we told you to install Ghidra, and you have some of these commands like cd or chmod. What do these do? I guess we'll start from the top. So I've already told you how to sort of navigate through your directory structure, sort of how to tree. Maybe you guys learned about trees in SIGPwny or something like that. I don't really know much about trees, but I don't go outside and touch grass. I was doing. So ls, this is the command to list directory contents. And if you type it by itself, it'll run in your current directory. You can also give it a directory after ls, and it will list the contents of that. And this is very useful for just, you know, where am I? What's going on? You can also use FA2024 to create your working directory. That's not as important. Don't worry about it. C, that stands for change directories. Don't worry about the abbreviation, but it's more so what these things do. This will change your current directory, your current context. How do you move from point A to point B? So you see, and not arguing about that, it's where you'd like to go. And Adarsh was explaining that this single dot and the double dot stand for your current directory and the parent of the current directory. And so those are super useful because you can do this relative reverse. And of course, the tab key. Don't forget the tab key. That's great. Autocomplete is fantastic. Only I had like Google Docs. I think we can practice. RN, that stands for remove files and directories. A word of warning if you are new to Unix. RM is not reversible. Let me repeat that. RM is not reversible. If you're worried about removing something, make it back first. Really. I make this mistake very consistently to this day of deleting the file by accident. And it's like, oh no, it's gone forever. It's actually completely gone. So you learn how to hard way and you can practice. Why is RM is not reversible, be careful when I command. We have a question over there, and then is something else. Another helper means there's cat. Yeah. Will output, it will encapsulate the results of a file or several files to your standard message. So it'll print file basically. It's kind of like the print file. Very easy for checking what's inside of a script. Or if you try to run out a binary file, what will happen? Well, they don't think about it. You need to try it out right now. No, can anyone run cat on the next file? Can anyone run cat, this cat command? Try running cat on like an executable. I don't know what everything will happen. It could be like my computer will slow up. Yeah. Exactly, yeah. So we have a very answer here, so you output will get messed up, you know, unprintable characters. Basically, it'll be total gibberish. Not a text file.
Very cool information.
Let's have the next thing, if you go commands, right? But what if instead of a shell built in or a program, a standard program like Echo or Jack, it's like, what if I just put a file as the first parameter? Your shell is whatever. You'll just try to run that file. It'll just say, okay, run. So when you were running feature earlier, we may have had to type /fever run. And that's it. That's just the name of the file to add the scripts, fever run. And it's gonna run. And it's a bash script. And you're on it. And you can clear your operations.
It's like, there's
If you want programs to kind of be available from wherever, regardless of what your current directory is. You have to have. I'm not gonna talk about that because having to consider that is basically the unsolved problem. in computer science. Happen only to be versus me. You solve it, you get $1 million, $1 billion. All right.
So somebody points out to me earlier.
And the last thing I would like to talk about
My end.
is Dan, which is very small of the Unix hackers cracking the WMD. But I think for manual.
I'm gonna make him post.
And this is awesome. It's Google. I'm gonna update or in I'm not going to add my page so good. But it's great. You should try it out. Highly recommend. You use it on things that are not streaming too, like the ceasing of weather. I won't like go into further depth.
I'm gonna do a quick walkthrough of some of these commands here with the terminal. Alright, so here we have test directory. So first go ahead and check out the ls command. So you can see here we have kind of 3 outputs. There is and I can just figure it. We have dir A, dir B, and file a.txt. So we can see into directory by clicking cd and dir B, for example. And then if you run ls again, we see files as well. If we want to root file, we can just run rm. And if we listen again, we see ba.txt gone. And now one of the most useful ones is cat. And does anyone here know what cat stands for? If I can say why is this program out? So cat is short for concatenate. So basically, if you actually specify multiple files, what cat will do is it will print out the outputs of both files concatenated to each other. But it's also just happens to be like how you read files on Linux. So we're going to use cat to cat flag.txt. And a neat feature of Linux, most shells and Linux on WSL, Mac, and Linux in general, is that it autocomplete. So if you press the tab button, you can actually autocomplete file names, command lines. So usually a lot of commands will support Linux. And you see here we have sample how you kind of flag. But yeah, that's some basics of how you manipulate the Linux process. Also demonstrate commands. So if you don't know, like, oh, ls, I don't really know how to use it. There's some options, maybe like, how do I list hidden files? So you can type command and then the command and see that information. So, and then you can like scroll around your arrow keys. I'll show you all these options. It's very helpful if you're working with a command, you're not comfortable with, and you don't have to use it, right? You can use Google. Because Google, you are using Google. It's probably considered fine information that way. Man is useful if, for example, you're working on a system and you don't have internet, right? Or maybe eventually at some point you're able to put command line that, oh, I don't want to go to my browser, open the new tab, type Google, type command or browse, with my browser. Sometimes it's just faster to use command, and then you can also search within this within this text as well.
Yeah.
All right, and then, to wrap this up, we'll do some commands for networking. So, these will be relevant for doing a lot of the challenges in, CTF. Because, we'll have web conference which will be around here, but some of the challenges that we'll do with the theory will require you to use, terminal, which is why we had all this stuff in the beginning. By default, these, commands are, found on most learning situations, so it's really asked, you can set up, some components. If you're on Macs or Linux, you can pull it, you can pull it. But NC is short for netcat. So this is a tool that you can use to connect to network ports. So when you use netcat, you type in IP address and port number. Then that will connect you to the IP, and then you can interact with whatever service is running that port. Netcat by default is unencrypted. And the services that you can connect to with Netcat will be unencrypted. SSH is the secure shell, which is encrypted. The secure shell is basically you can as you're logging into a remote computer's shell, right? So you have your own local WSL or terminal, you have your own local terminal. That's your local shell on your computer. A lot of times when you're connecting to remote systems, you want to access that remote system shell. So the secure shell is how you do that. We have some challenges that are related to SSH as well. And we'll get to that a little bit more. There's also a P command, which is useful if you want to check about hosts up or PCs up. So if you want P and IP address, it will tell you if the machine is running. Perl and wget are both used for downloading files from the web using HTTP. So your browser is just an HTTP client. Your terminals can also download stuff from HTTP. So Perl and wget, they're used almost interchangeably. It has some minor differences. Usually Perl is found more often because it's older and more well maintained. But wget is like the newer version and it has nice features as well. So just specifying better command flags. Right, and just a little bit more on netcat, right? So ports are these abstractions on your PC or abstractions in the TCP IP stack, which let your IP address run local services on up to 65,535 ports. Does anyone know why that number is chosen specifically? Yeah, it's so it would be it's 2 to the power of I think 8 or 16 minus 1. So yeah. We're one of those, it's power 2 basically, right? The ports are less than 1024 are usually like very restricted because they're common ports that are commonly used to services. So the reason they're restricted is that way you don't run like someone on your computer system on SSH and the reason there's no port 0 is I don't know, standards. I believe there might be port 0. I don't think it's actually used currently. Because of historic reasons. I believe it's why some of the SIGPwny. Okay. So on
Do we have Reddit challenges up? I did the first call.
Okay, so, there's, everything here was kind of, unfamiliar to you, right? And we need some help learning how to use Linux or this terminal. And you don't want to mess with your own system because, you could potentially mess up your own files. There's this very helpful lab that is set up for free by some very nice people, and you can connect to it using SSH. So, if you type in this command in, both Windows, PowerShell, or WSL, or Mac terminal, or whatever shell you're running on Linux, you can connect to Bandit. And you can notice there's a Bandit 0, right? So SSH here is command, and then Bandit 0 is the username that you're connecting to, and then the IP address is actually the host name. So this will get resolved to an IP address, and you specify -P for the port number. So, as you mentioned earlier, we have an IP address and a port. So you're connecting to a specific IP at port and you're logging in as a specific user. And the username, sorry, the password for Bandit 0 is Bandit 0, right? And the way the challenge works is you find the password for the next user. Like if you log into Bandit 0, your goal is to find the password for Bandit 1. So once you get the password, you log in as Bandit 1, and then you type in a new password. And if you go to FA2024, we have kind of Bandit as a challenge. So you can click on there. There should be a link to the actual Bandit website that gives a little bit more instructions on how to, practice your Linux skills. Right. So. These are challenges right now on FA2024, right? So we have Netcat. This is our own sort of version of the Netcat challenge. So it's just teaching you how to use Netcat, shell basics, and very simple character. So these challenges are all on FA2024, and I can also teach you that. So more resources. So we post all our meetings on our website at SIGPwny.com/meetings. We also ask for any help. You can ask for help on Discord. We're always usually someone's going online to answer your question if you need it. The missing seminar is I believe a course on some of this Linux stuff. So if you're interested in learning more, you can check that out. And there's some more resources on it as well. And definitely use Google because it'll be less. So interview Linux, which is totally fine. Yeah, so I want to reiterate, right? We had this whole step in here where I will help you. We can't either pass some time because we only have room reservations for a certain amount of time. We just sold this room today because we don't have our room reservation yet. So we can stay a little bit longer to help you guys out. But definitely ask Al for help, ask for help in Discord. Yes. So we go to the next meeting and I'll show a little bit more. So next meeting is this Thursday, we're doing web hacking 1. And then next Sunday, we're also doing web hacking 2. So this is a little bit more easier to get started with. Today's setup was for setting up for future meetings, right? So these web hacking 1 meetings can actually be done entirely within your browser. You usually don't need that many external tools. But having links and doing will actually be a lot of help for these topics as well. And I want to highlight Policy Grant 2024. It's Sunday. So sign up at SIGPwny.com, register 24. We have a Google form where you can fill out your information. And we use this so we know how many shirts we need to order. So if you think, at your coming, definitely fill it out. And we'll be sending out more reminders about policies as well on this group. Does anyone have any questions about meeting content? And if anyone has these, raise your hand as well. But does anyone have any questions about the meeting content about this last week? Okay, feel free to leave if you're convinced that, if you need help, feel free to stick around and we'll soon figure it out. But thank you for coming. SIGPwny.com/meetings is where you can find these slides. We'll also post a more updated version, trying to think some of the issues that you guys may ran into here. So if that's not the today, if you need advice, we'll come out now and communicate with us.
Thank you everyone for coming out to the meeting. Come to Web 1 on Thursday. Yeah.